Chapter 6, In the Glass. It's a funny thing growing up in the United States when you think about it. We're raised on a steady diet of hollow promises that we're all special, and a supplementary feed line of movies and TV that supports the totally false notion that any regular Joe can have a great adventure. When you think about it, The Goonies, Ferris Bueller, Die Hard, all three outstanding examples of the American cinematic vision, and all three which turn otherwise normal people are given opportunity to enjoy an adventure bigger than anything anyone I can think of, including myself, has ever experienced. A lifetime of hope drives most of us to believe that we're all just in the staging period of our lives, waiting for that big thing to fall from the sky, step off that elevator, pull up in that car, step out from behind that bookcase, or another 1,000 variations of the same idyllic introduction. As children, we watch the adults in our lives go about their days as titans in our world, huge, unassailable, and seemingly able to mold our existence. But the movies and TV, the heroes are every age and size, and you can be one of them. It just takes that instance. Now I'm as guilty of this grandiose, childlike, and ultimately hollow hope as anyone. Maybe more so. This being my case as a dyed-in-the-wool American, there have been times in my life when I felt I needed a suitably upbeat soundtrack and montage of moments in which I'm either having a silly amount of fun doing what would normally be busy work, like painting a house, washing a car, building a parade float, and so on, or on a date in which the most iconic moments are captured in a few choice sections of celluloid. Had my life at this point in the story descended into a cosmic date movie, then I could easily tell you that what followed was a classic collage of touchy-feely moments in which we bonded somewhat romantically over my knowledge of my hometown and her desire to be shown around. And given a choice, I'd happily take that option just for my own ego stroking. But the reality is, as it often chooses to be, somewhat less movie-like. I had a rolling good time driving Katie, like I stole her, along principal streets of Santa Monica. I didn't do more than pause for a stop sign and took every chance to power slide around a corner I could. Since I knew all the streets, I was supremely confident I could get away with it. Accelerated hard out of a corner, making the rear tires chirp in second gear. I looked over at Evette, expecting to see her usual reserved demeanor, but instead I found her smiling. I didn't say anything because I didn't want her to stop. I pulled into a parking space and we got out. Here we are. She looked towards the west, stretching out along the horizon. The Pacific Ocean was starting to glimmer in the afternoon sun. Down the hill on the beach was Santa Monica Pier. I motioned off to the left. That way is Venice Beach. I've seen these places in movies since I was a girl. She smiled. We walked down the hill to the pier. She stayed close, but I'm not sure why. It was unlikely we'd run into anyone I knew, so the fake girlfriend charade wasn't really an issue as far as I could tell. Although I suppose she was in a new place, country, and situation, but since she knew me, it was more comfort than anything. I showed her around the pier and its generally tourist-friendly stands and shops, and she just stared and took it all in, not saying too much. The arcade actually piqued more of her interest than the iconic Ferris wheel. I wouldn't have pegged you for a gamer, I said to her as we walked into the loud arcade. She said to me while taking a look around the cabinets of shooters and fighting games, "To be fair, you don't know me." "I think I know more about the science of light-speed travel than I do about you," I remarked. Spotting what she was searching for, she again surprised me. I followed her. She walked right up to a time and well-used Time Crisis 3 machine and promptly swiped the arcade card through the reader. I leaned against the wall next to the machine. "You're joking, right? No attractive woman plays Time Crisis." She looked at me and slid the pink plastic pistol from its resting place. "I guess that's a plus for me then," she smirked as she arched an eyebrow. I didn't know what to think at this point. On the one hand, it's always a turn-on to see a hot girl play a gun-based video game, but on the other hand, I guess the other hand is really just a feedback loop that says gender paradox approaching. Beware of possible horrible catch in which she unhinges her jaw and swallows you alive. I added to my first statement, "No, you don't understand. If a cute girl plays this game, I would have heard about it on CNN. It never happens, Evette. Ever." She slid the plastic slide on the pistol and raised it. "Watching then?" Doing as I was bidden, I stood behind her and watched. She raised her weapon and in perfect emulation of a military two-hand grip prepared to shoot. I was wrong. She did play, and play well. In the first level, she had an accuracy of nearly 90%, very precise, not spraying with the machine gun or using the ham-fisted shotgun to smack multiple enemies at once. "Who are you?" was all I could manage after the second level, where she effortlessly blasted away legions of minions. She mostly ignored me and instead looked at me for a half second and smiled. Maybe it was late afternoon sun, or maybe the soft glow of the screen from Time Crisis. Whatever the reason, that smile felt like it was just for me, like we'd shared a moment. Sappy, I know, but that's what happened, so sue me for being a sucker for a pretty smile. For a further 5 minutes, she continued to impress me with her digital marksmanship before the sheer difficulty overwhelmed her precision shooting. I whistled an impressed note. Nicely done. She answered humbly, We do have video games in France? I had my suspicions, I joked. And she laughed. Not guardedly, just laughed. It made me swell with pride. We wandered out of the arcade, walked down to the pier's southern stairs, and strolled along the beach till we got to the boardwalk of Venice Beach. Along the way, she took off her heels and walked in the surf, and I joined her, having worn my shorts and sandals. As far as I could see, she was just another happy tourist, taking in the beach. We didn't talk much along the beach. I just wanted to think, and she seemed content to experience the ambiance at her own rhythm. And I kept reminding myself I was not here to date this girl. I didn't even know her last name. Have you ever been to Venice Beach? It's a favorite place of mine, which sounds tacky if you're from LA, I know. To most jaded Angelinos, it's a tourist trap. To me, though, not a native of California, I love it. I saw it when I was 18 for the first time. I flew to California for my birthday to take in the sights and sounds. It was a trip I look back on fondly. It was my first time taking a trip by myself, no family or friends. I stayed with a friend of the family, but they were so busy I may as well have been house sitting. I had a wad of cash that I'd saved all summer, a 10-speed bike, a map, and no world-weary view to spoil my fun. It was one of the first places I visited. I remember thinking as I rode my bike up on the backside of the buildings that separated the boardwalk from the city, what a dump. The air was sticky and polluted, and there was a fine coat of what could only be described as civilization's entropy covering everything. It's that indefinable film of humanity that only shows in an area where people move through every day but no one really cares about, like the entryway to a grocery store or the double doors to a huge building. It's not really ever clean despite whatever attempts are made to keep it clean, but it is so used and broken in, it's not unwelcoming. There's no getting around those areas in life. Certain places have it deeper and more widespread than others. I hadn't seen much of it in my life then, so it was a natural reaction when I did see it. Discomfort follows the unfamiliar closely. But then I turned around the corner and looked down the long footpath that wove through the urban marketplace. There wasn't anything like it where I grew up. I chained up my bike and proceeded to wander the market for 5 hours. I was, and still am in many ways, so captivated by the energy of the place. On one side is the beach, and on the other side is crammed with building facades and bursting with restaurants, bars, trinket shops, tattoo parlors, and used booksellers, surf shops, clothing stores. And in between is the boardwalk. Nearly 2-mile stretch of temporary stands that hawk everything from cheap watches to your name on a grain of rice. The long sidewalk itself is interesting. Chalk artists lay down loving works which can be destroyed by rain and stamping feet. Henna stands offer temporary tattoos that the young flock to as a taste of something they can't yet take part in. And the whole sense of Venice Beach is that it captures so much of the California culture, while being at the same time not part of it. As I walked Evette along the boardwalk, I could see her taking it in. Why did you bring me here? She asked after a few minutes. I've always loved Venice Beach. It's so alive. I used to eat here every Saturday for lunch, and as far as things to enjoy in LA go, I thought she'd enjoy it, I answered. We stopped at a vendor selling jewelry made of plastic bottle caps, and she continued to interview me as we looked over the wares. Did you really think I'd like this, or is it special to you? I wasn't expecting such a clinical question and stammered for a response. Both. Either. What does it matter? She held up something that looked like a series of Heineken bottle caps held together with silver chain, but I couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be. She asked the vendor for a price. Well, for you, lovely lady, the vendor said. A sun-weathered man in his 50s with a silver ponytail and smiled, and answered, 80. The vet reached into her handbag and handed him a Benjamin. While he made change and put the bottle cap bauble into a bag, she answered me, I'm trying to learn more about Yvonne. It seemed a simple enough answer. I've always liked it here. I thought you'd like it here too, I professed. The vendor handed the bag and the change to Evette. It'll look great on you. She grinned. Thank you. I'm sure it will. The vendor then said to me, You're a lucky guy. A deadpan. Yeah, so I keep hearing. Evette and I walked away from the vendor. Are you all right? And the list of questions I expected from her, for some reason that was nowhere on it. I didn't know if I was all right. To be honest, was I? I mean, who in their right mind is prepared for what I was going through? So I lied. Me? I'm great. What's not to be okay about? I've got good company. I'm getting ready to embark on a quest of discovery and civilization-altering work. Apparently, I'm awesome right now. She frowned a bit. You're not a talented liar. I deflected the fact away. Only when it comes to women. She rolled her eyes. You don't want to talk about it? I took a deep breath and thought about my answer. I don't know what I want right now. I'm equal parts shaken and stirred at the moment. I saw her lips form a small smile at the reference. Well, let's try to keep things light while we're here, shall we? I smiled and took in one last appraising look of Venice Beach as we walked back to Katie. Evette tossed the jewelry and the other mementos she had purchased in the back of the cab before she got into the car. I stopped her. At this point, the sun had started to brush the horizon, just about time for dinner. We've got our other stop over there, I pointed down the street. Evette closed the car door and we walked to my other favorite spot in Santa Monica. And considering the time frame, it was really the only other spot in Greater LA we had time to get to. The 3rd Street Promenade is a lot like Venice Beach, but where Venice is bohemian-style boardwalk, the Promenade is a modern metroculture pedestrian mall. Movies and TV shows frequently have scenes filmed there, and its storefronts are typical of American consumerism. The two are separated by only a few blocks, but they are like two sides of the same coin. One was designed, the other grew organically. Evette seemed much more at home on the Promenade than she did on the boardwalk. She walked closely to the clothing store windows. I wasn't paying much attention to the Promenade itself, however, because the real reason I was there was located at the far end in a corner diner you may remember called Thunderburger. Now, we were just about there when Evette stopped and looked longingly at a trio of mannequins in the window of some clothing store whose name escapes me. She didn't say anything, she just stared. I looked at the mannequins out of curiosity. 2 of them wore fairly typical blue dresses with plunging necklines that hugged at the hips and looked quite striking. The third one, however, was hot rod red, and despite its simple design, was very sexy just by nature of the cut. In order to facilitate our advance towards Thunderburger, I said simply, "You'd look good in the red one." Evette simply said, "Most likely. I like blue more, though." I didn't really think too much of it at the time, considering I could see the neon glow of Thunderburger's front sign edging around the corner. I'm starving. I'd rather let Bryn rip out my fingernails than get back on a plane with her without her enjoying one last double bacon cheeseburger before I leave the country, I preached. Although I doubt the French have an appreciation for the finer points of an awesome cheeseburger. She shook her head and rolled her eyes. Like you said to Bryn, you have to be too busy developing truly amazing cuisine and things like filet mignon and a creme brulee. And she was starting to be full of surprises. So what you're saying is you've never had a bacon double cheeseburger before. She sighed and looked off to one side as we walked up to the door to Thunderburger. No, I have not. Oh, this changes everything, I exclaimed while I opened the door for her. Remember what I said about Katie and how if this is going to work and so on? Yes, I remember, she said. Well, this is another one of those things, I expressed. We sat down in a booth and looked around the diner while we waited on someone to take our order. The jukebox was blaring out golden oldies from the 60s, and the diner crowd was just starting to come in. And the sound of clinking plates and silverware permeated the air, and the smell of the grill was intoxicating. Behind the counter, I could see the cooks hard at work. I breathed it in. There's no telling when I'd be able to enjoy it again. Over the sound of the jukebox, I heard a familiar voice. "No suit?" I looked over to see Felicia stroll up to the table. She was smiling broadly, but I saw her smile waver when she saw Evette sitting across from me, a spot where she usually sits when we chat and flirt. Sometimes I'm glad I'm the guy in this situation. It makes things less dramatic. "Hey there," I beamed. "It's good to see a familiar face." Her eyebrows drew together. "Why, did your attempt at foiling those diamond smugglers go badly?" I'm glad she was still playing the usual game. "Like you wouldn't believe. I got kidnapped, whisked across the world, and been held captive for weeks." "Well, then you want the usual to help you recover from your ordeal," she asked. "No, you can read me like a book, my dove," I answered. She smiled as she scribbled down the order and turned to Evette. "What'll it be?" "The same," she said, her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. No, don't tell me I have to do the fake girlfriend thing here, too." Felicia looked at me and asked, "Who's your friend?" This is Evette, one of my captors," I said, trying to keep my tone light despite it being more or less true. Felicia extended a hand. "Hi, I'm Felicia. Love your shoes, dolce?" Evette didn't shake her hand. She kept her eyes level at me and answered, "Custom made in Paris." "Evette," I said, "you're being kind of rude." "Am I?" she answered tersely. Felicia, I could tell, was feeling nervous. "I'll go get your drinks." Yes, it's customary to shake someone's hand and not act like a stuck-up trollop when you meet new people," I told her. Right about here is where I wish I had a magic 8-ball that was in fact magic. If I could have, I don't know, I could have acted with a bit more daring, bravery, either one, really. Evette opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, I heard the sound of gunshots and glass shattering. The diner was in chaos. People dove to the floor among the broken glass, and I heard people screaming. I looked through the shattered front windows of Thunderburger, and climbing through the broken window frames were 3 big guys dressed in gray suits, each holding in his hand a very large gun. And I froze. Evette grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me from the booth as one of them pointed right at me, and I shot off a handful of painfully loud shots. A salt shaker ketchup bottle and napkin dispenser exploded as the bullets ripped through them. I hit the floor hard and heard the trio shout, "That's him!" I looked across the diner and saw Felicia on the floor. Her white shirt was soaked in blood, and she was cradling her arm, tears in her eyes. Our eyes locked, and she looked at me with fear I didn't know existed. The diner. My diner was in pandemonium. Like I said, I wish I could tell you I was the hero here. That I dashed across a storm of gunfire and scooped her up, and then dove to safety as we escaped in my car in a thrilling high-speed chase through LA to the hospital, and when she was well again, I took her on a romantic date and we lived happily, blah, 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 blah. I really do wish that. But I'm not some action hero. I'm not Jackie Chan or Jason Statham or even the plucky sidekick. I'm just an artist with a weakness for legs and a predilection towards classic rock, and at that point, I was an artist who was on the verge of being shot in a diner. I huddled with Evette behind the booth, and the next sound I heard made my ears ring as Evette shot back at them with a small automatic I assumed she kept in her purse. I saw 2 of the guys drop hard, and the third returned fire. I squealed in pain as a bullet slashed across my shoulder. Manly, I know. Evette shoved me towards the kitchen. "Move!" Her gun thundered again, and I hurled myself through the door. The 2 cooks were on the floor cowering. Smart play, really. I felt her small hand push on my back, and I kept moving towards the rear door. I heard the crash and looked back in time to see the last guy move past a rack of broken dishes and raise his gun to fire again. I couldn't think. I had no thoughts at all. The sound of gunshots slapped me in the ears, and I was falling backward with only one thought on my mind.